I have...
Talking to.
Let's rock and roll.
Look at these buns. Shout out to my mom for not teaching me anything about nutritional facts. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am finally making your dreams come true. We got a special guest in the kitchen. It's Mike from Mike's Killer Bread. He is going to show you how to make his famous, it's not really famous because I don't think anybody's tried it except for our friends.
It's just going to be like a simple white crusty bread. Not super complicated, doesn't take too long. It's great.
A lot of white crusty things in our house. So I'm going to pass the spatula over to you because there's too many cooks in the kitchen already. I don't even know what's going on here. You guys have fun.
We're using a recipe that I found in the New York Times. It's called Simple Crusty Bread. And it's the first recipe that I made, and it's one that I go back to often because it only takes a few hours to make. You can start in the morning, and by early afternoon you have a beautiful loaf of bread to eat. Now, what I've heard in a lot of the research I've done on bread making in general is if you mix the yeast and the salt together, the salt will actually kill the yeast. So generally, I try not to put the two of them together, at least right away. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix the yeast and the water together with a little bit of flour, and that will give the yeast a little something to start eating and to activate. So I'm using this dry yeast. Super simple, you can get it anywhere. We got this from Thrive Market, but it is dry. So you want to generally activate the yeast. It's actually a living organism. And so right now it's basically asleep. So we want to wake it up. We want it to get active before we actually start making the bread. So this recipe calls for 2 packets of yeast. And I'm gonna pour in some of this water here. Now this is 3 cups of water, which I'd measured before, and I had also warmed it up. So yeast likes warmth. If it's cold, it goes to sleep. If it's warm, it starts to wake up. So nothing too hot because we're not trying to kill it. So I'm just gonna let it sit there. And now I'm also gonna give it some flour because what yeast likes to do is it likes to eat sugars. It likes to eat starches. So I'm gonna put some flour in there to give it some food, which will also help get it activating. So the recipe calls for 6.5 cups of flour. So I'm gonna just start with 1 cup. So now we just have 1 cup of flour, we've got the yeast, and we've got 2 cups of warm water in there. And now I'm gonna mix it up a little bit. I'm using, this is the KitchenAid. It's a little bit bigger. And then I'm just gonna turn on, just on a simple low setting, to just kind of mix up yeast, water, and flour. What we're looking for is air bubbles. So as the yeast starts eating the flour that we put in there, it creates carbon dioxide. And then what happens in the bread is the air bubbles, the carbon dioxide that the yeast is creating, that's what gives us the bubbles and the holes in the bread itself. The recipe calls for 1.5 tablespoons of salt. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna now mix this in with the remaining bit of water so that when I pour it in there, it's not a huge amount of salt going in one place. It's something that'll be kind of dissolved a little bit and won't be quite as intense for the yeast to handle. So now if you wanna come take a look inside our mix here, you can kind of see those bubbles that have been forming. So I feel like it's in a pretty good place. I think the yeast is kind of like coming to life a bit. Looks like it's having a good time. So I'm gonna start mixing in the rest of all of our ingredients here. So we've already put in 1 cup of flour. We need to put in 5.5 more cups. And then we have to put in the rest of our water, which now also has our salt in it. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna use this little scraper and I'm gonna scrape away any like little dry bits of flour on the bottom. Bread is really just 4 ingredients. It's flour, yeast, salt, and water. So that's basically almost any bread, unless you're putting in herbs or anything else to flavor. Like that's your basic bread recipe, and it's how you combine those things and at what temperature and what you do with it that really affects the outcome of the bread. So I'm gonna mix this just a little bit more, and then we'll let it rest for a while. Then now we've got like a pretty well-mixed dough. Everything is combined really nicely. It doesn't look like there's any weird chunks. We need to cover it, not with an airtight lid, and we need to let it rise for 2 hours, up to 5 hours. So you could just cover this with saran wrap, as long as some air can get out. But you can also, if you have a container like this, this is kind of ideal. So I'm gonna spray the inside of this with olive oil so the dough doesn't stick to it. And I'm just gonna spray the sides, I'm gonna spray the bottom. So we got the dough sitting here now. We're gonna watch it rise. So over the next 2 hours, I'm just gonna lay this on top. I'm not gonna push it closed just so the air can still get out. It sits here at room temperature and it'll kind of take on a life of its own.
Okay guys, I think I'm gonna invent the coolest thing ever to eat, and I promise I'm not stoned. It's the afternoon on a Monday. So I'm gonna try to take an espresso, one of my 10 Jenny's ice creams. This one's salty caramel, it's one of my favorites. I just discovered it on Thursday. Last week, it's Monday. That's how good it is. Basically, here's my deal. I'm gonna do 1 shot of the strong espresso. I'm gonna switch things up a little bit and use chocolate almond breeze. Thank you to my assistant. I'm gonna use chocolate almond breeze instead of regular vanilla. But you know, if you're trying this at home, you can do whatever you want. That's what's fun about my recipes. There is no right and there's no wrong. So that's about 2/3 of the chocolate almond milk to espresso. And then I like to get like a good scoop. Hey Ray, what Ray? So I'm gonna take 1 full scoop of the salty caramel ice cream and just topple it off right there. That looks pretty good. Let it just simmer for just a second. And again, you can use whatever ice cream that you want at home. And you can use regular chocolate milk, which would be really, really dope, but I don't have that. Because we don't have regular milk here. Ooh, it's pretty bomb. Hold up. Baby, you gotta try this. Have 1 tiny little sip. I swear you're gonna die. I'm gonna trademark this. Let's interrupt this coffee break with a little visit to Bread Town. What's happening over here?
This is the dough that we're going to be making 4 loaves with.
Okay.
And it's just sitting here.
Okay, that sounds great. Let's go and see what's going on in the pantry. Let's show the people how we roll. First of all,
thrill them with our incredible collection.
No, I'm going to show people for real. This is not planned, by the way. This is on the cuff. On the cuff?
Off
the cuff. Off the cuff. This is literally my pride and joy project. I did this like 2 weeks ago. And I went to the Container Store and bought all of the things to just make everything like labeled and precise.
See, there's already a candy container here, labeled candy. There's one labeled cookies. This has no label because it's just more candy.
Guys, I've got a little bit of the sweet tooth.
We got Justin's. We have
cookies.
Gummy bears.
I need more room for cookies.
We have more gummy rabbits. Another box of gummy rabbits.
There's healthy chips.
Fruit snacks. More, pops. Pops.
I'm what you would call the girl on the go, so I just need things that you can grab and take in the car and eat. Sure, there's a lot of snacks, but we have a lot of kids that come over to visit.
Oh, are these for the kids?
Yes, these are for the kids.
By kids, you mean
And then, I'm sorry, but you're the guy that goes on Thrive and orders 30 beef jerky bars, and then they just sit here.
These aren't beef, these are chicken sriracha. And they're really good. We just got them.
Okay, so let's walk through here. We've got Mike's cooking stuff. Then this is my favorite section of the pantry. It's the granola section. And nothing's better than when you just want a hot water oatmeal. And it literally takes a minute and a half. And I'm sorry, it reminds me of my childhood and it's so good. Shout out to my mom for not teaching me anything about nutritional facts. I don't know why we have so much pasta sauce all the time. We've got Marcana almonds. We got regular almonds, salted almonds, pistachio nut, cashew nut.
Pistachio nut, red pistachio nut, natural, all natural white pistachio nut.
We've got these prunes that Mike swears they don't, no, are these dates?
They're not prunes, they're dates.
Whatever, he swears these do not go bad, but you guys, I'm telling you they've been in there for 3 years and then he makes eggs with them and it makes me want to puke.
Alright, so we haven't even lived in this house for 3 years.
And what are these? They're not mine.
Chocolate covered almonds, those are mine.
Exactly. Popcorn the kettle black.
Alright, so we've spent 3.5 hours with the flour or the dough mixture just rising in here. I've preheated the oven to 450. What I have in there is a baking stone, and we'll show you that in a minute, but it's basically just like a simple pizza stone. You can get it pretty much anywhere. And I put it in the oven before I started preheating. So the stone itself is gonna be super, super hot also. Now that we're done with the rise, I'm gonna take this out, I'm gonna divide it, because this is gonna make 4 loaves, and then I'm gonna start to shape the loaves and just dust the countertop. We're doing that to keep the flour from sticking. I'm also gonna spray, I'm gonna go back to the olive oil spray. I'm gonna spray the top of the dough a little bit, and then just kind of the edges of this side of the container. And now, see, it's from the oil, nothing's sticking, it's perfect, and it's just gonna plop right out. Now, if you look at it, you can see the structure, you can see all these little holes and everything. So that's how the bread is gonna have the holes inside. You can see it actually already exists in the dough. Put a little flour on top here. So what I'm doing right here, I'm basically just folding it over itself. Just kind of stretch it and fold it. I'm gonna take just a little plastic dough cutter, which came from Chef's Toys, and I'm gonna cut this into 4 different loaves. So now this is called a proofing basket. I got these on Amazon. I'm gonna take some flour, just throw it on the inside here so it doesn't stick. The proofing basket is one way to take your shaped loaf, and we have to proof it. So the proofing is kind of the final rising of the dough. So we have the first rise in the big container. The second rise is gonna be as an individual loaf. We're gonna let these rise and proof outside of the baskets. Put them just right here on a little pile of flour. And you can dust a little bit more on top, like kind of a light cotton cloth. And I'm just gonna cover these just to keep them nice and clean. We're gonna let everything sit for 45 minutes. So I'm gonna set the timer now, 45 minutes, and then that's it, then we're gonna bake. Okay, so very exciting. I shaped the loaves. I put 2 in proofing baskets. You can already see that they've grown quite considerably in size. So this is their second rise. And then I have...
Who are you talking to?
This is my video.
I'm killing mosquitoes right now.
So now I have the other 2 loaves that I've been proofing on the counter. So what we're gonna do in a proofing basket, after you have finished with a loaf, you basically flip it over, and this will be the bottom of the loaf. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make little designs. I'm gonna take a really sharp knife here, and when you see bread that has kind of like a flower pattern or something else on it, it's because they took, usually it's a razor blade, I'm just gonna use a little knife. I'm gonna make a cross or a plus sign. We're ready to go. Let's rock and roll. Okay, so again, the oven has been at 450 for a while, so that baking stone in there is like crazy hot. So I gotta be really careful about my hands. I have a pan at the bottom of the oven here. I'm gonna pour 2 cups of water into the pan. I'm also going to spray the tops of each loaf with my spray bottle, which has drinking water in it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open the oven here. I'm gonna pull out the baking stone. I'm gonna very gently transfer all of these onto the baking stone. I'm gonna spray them down with water, push it back in there, pour the cup of water into the pan down below, close it up, and hopefully not burn myself. So let's see how this goes. Fingers crossed. There we go. The baking time per the recipe is 30 minutes. Probably around 20 minutes or so, I'm gonna start checking on it and just see the color. You want it to get to a nice brown, you don't want it to get burned. Okay, this is only after about 15 minutes, but you can look at how beautiful these loaves are turning out. Just from the color, they look beautiful.
You know I'm over here, right?
What's that?
You can talk to me.
I got a bossy assistant over here.
Well, I'm camera B.
Camera B.
You can talk to camera B.
Camera B, okay. What's really exciting is the shape of these loaves. Because we spent that extra time just shaping them, folding them, they've really popped up huge.
Look at these buns.
Look at those buns. Now be careful when you're opening the oven, especially after you pour that water in there. When you open it, a ton of steam is going to come out, so don't get your face right up next to it. With the steam, or even if it's just dry air, you can still burn yourself.
What if you need a facial?
Then go to a facialist. Okay, here we go. So look at all that steam coming up. These are glorious. Two, they're really hot.
I hate to break it to you, these two are stuck together. Oh, never mind.
So both of these two were cut, and then these guys with a kind of interesting random patterns. This is from the proofing basket.
I've seen this on Chef's Table. I'm just going to take a close-up of each one.
You're doing great. As they cool off, it's going to collect moisture just from the air. So depending on where you live, this can actually affect how the bread comes out. But when you're ready to eat them, throw them in a toaster oven for 2 or 3 minutes, and that will heat them back up. That'll take out a lot of moisture, and the crust will actually be even better than it is right now.
Yeah, no, I'm ready to eat it now. I'm ready to eat it. All right, so while we're waiting for Mike's bread to cool down, I'm actually eating, so you guys can see, some of the other bread that he made last night. Well, then I know how to do this. This is what you do when you want things to focus. This is the bread that he made last night. What kind of bread is this, babe? It's a little bit of thinner bread, right?
It's similar bread. It's a little thinner. It's not quite as open and holy. This is gonna be dynamite.
I got it all over on my face. Hold on. I'm so proud of you. You did a whole bread making class, finally.
I did a whole bread.
The people have spoken. They wanted to see it. And guys, if you want to see more of these videos, let us know in the comments.
We'll do more. And this is easy enough. All of you guys saw. We're gonna post the recipe. You can follow along at home.
And tag us. I want to see you guys try to make this.
I want to see how it turns out.
And Mr. Mike Rosenthal, it was a pleasure having you on my show today.
It's a pleasure to be here at Jen Atkin here.
Thank you for watching, you guys. Make sure that you like and subscribe. And let us know if you want to see more cooking, because I'm down to eat. So I'm down to do more of these. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.